Any motions on the consent agenda?
I would move approval.
Great. Is there a second? I will second it then. Okay, Stephanie, I think
From Ava Community Energy.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, first, I think we need to go to the public comment though first. Any member of the public wanting to comment on the consent agenda? Raise your hand. Okay. Stephanie, I think you can take the vote.
Thank you. Ava Community Energy,
Yes.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy, absent right now. Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes on A, abstain on B. Thank
correct. Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously with the members in attendance.
Great. And I saw Sean just joined us. We're on the consent agenda. Sean, that passed. So we are on to item 6A on the regular agenda, which is approving our strategic priorities. So I'm going to pass it over to Alex.
Well, hey, board members, welcome, and good to have you us all together one last time this year. I hope everybody has a restful holiday after this meeting, and I'll try to move quickly so we send everybody on their way. The first item today is to come back to the board with the draft final strategic priorities. You'll obviously recall we discussed these at the board meeting last month, and last month was where we shared how we had captured the strategic priorities from the member forum offsite in October. So what I propose to do today is I'll run the board through these again. I'll highlight some very narrow but important differences from last month. And then that would be a time where the board may wish to consider and adopt these. We can go next slide. So we're still looking at a situation for 2026 to 2030 of 4 strategic priorities. These will help CC Power have clear guidance for what buckets of work to check in with members and explore or offer opt-in projects. The 4 are procure, so procurement of wholesale contract management and wholesale power resources. Explore, assess and procure emerging higher risk and unusual technologies or projects. Own, lead member CCA power asset ownership efforts. And then 4 is implement, successfully implement and manage the ongoing or future phase 3 project agreements, which we know are really important. These are still an ambitious set of strategic priorities, but I do think it's a manageable set that we can implement. And if we move to the next slide, I'll speak a little bit more. We had some discussion last month, and I wanted to clarify some important distinctions, and these are all documented in the strategic priorities summary document. One thing that's really important is we still plan to use the annual work planning and budgets to determine scopes. So the way this could work is that in Q1, when we check in with members on their work plan or interests for the upcoming year, there's a clear gateway where the board will have decision-making and input into what the scope of work within each one of these priority areas is. I think this is important because it ensures that CC Power is very clearly aligned with the board. Number 2, we clarified some language around this concept of compliance-driven. And this is a case where we defined compliance-driven to refer to projects where there are directed procurements, such as from a regulator, that are good candidates for joint action. And this can occur sometimes due to the project sizing. A good example is if a CCA is instructed to procure 7 megawatts of a resource that does not come in a 7 megawatt size, this would be a time where joint action might be appropriate. And so we understand that compliance driven here does not refer to CC Power being responsible for any CCA's compliance, but we would be the type of project we explore for joint action. And some good examples here would be firm clean resources or the long duration storage work that occurred in the past. We also removed language around bread and butter procurement because we felt that this was confusing, and it's really important when operating and scoping the work for CC Power to have a structure that members opt into and that the members direct the work. And so we don't want to get too far ahead of the membership in terms of the types of procurement, even ordinary procurements that might qualify. So we think the strategic priority speaks for itself in defining procurement as an area within scope, and then talking with the board would help us define what the scope of any solicitation would be. And then another related part here is we understand that members are responsible for their own procurement, and we want to try and avoid confusion in the marketplace as much as possible. And so we'll adopt sort of protocols for how we time solicitations so that it works well for members and we avoid any confusion in the marketplace. And then lastly, we've shaped some of the approaches in the strategic priorities document to emphasize the goal of CC Power is to yield binding power contracts in many cases, even in emerging technologies. And so we've removed some of the language about MOUs or other ways we might try to engage emerging technologies or hard to contract technologies, because we felt that that was premature and actually confusing. And instead, we think it's more important to capture the board's direction on pursuing binding contracts. And so that's reflected in the latest document. One other important thing is what would all this cost? And so we foresee no budget changes this year. If the board adopts this, we will repurpose some of the phase one work. The phase one work is where we start to look at new ideas that the board's expressed interest in. We were looking at a couple different areas in the work plan, or we had scoped that, but now we would repurpose some of those phase one dollars. Think of it as about $50,000 to align directly with the board's strategic priorities. A good example would be to start to understand more about project ownership costs and ensuring our ownership assessment models reflect costs, including O&M costs, and what the rigors of that would be. So that's a good example. And then also part of this document is a recommendation to again use a budget ad hoc committee for the upcoming fiscal year 26 to 27. And that way the board would have, I think, direct input into how we shape the work plan and budget this first time through to really check that we're implementing the strategic priorities properly. I don't, for what it's worth, foresee a major shift in CC Power costs based on these strategic priorities, in part because a lot of the staffing model we've built and the work structures already align with these strategic priorities fairly well. So lastly, if this is adopted, we would have a direction to repurpose the phase one work, like I mentioned. We would then update the overall strategic plan, and I want to emphasize this. So there is this larger plan that has sort of multi-year implementation steps. We would update that and bring that back to the board so that we would have an updated strategic plan that reflects the updated strategic priorities. And then presumably, if the board supports it, we would launch an ad hoc for the 2026 to 2027 work and budget planning. And so, Chair Mitchell, I don't want to get ahead of the board on any of these, but these are some of the implementation steps we foresee. And of course, we would work with the board on how best to implement it, or if any shifts are appropriate.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Alex. And definitely want to thank the ad hoc committee, which was Monica, Howard, Mitch, and I. A lot of great work there, and all the directors for attending the retreat. I think this is really good to make sure that CC Power is clear on priorities that are aligned with the board. So with that, I will motion to approve and open for any other comments. Yeah, Barbara.
I just have two quick ones, I think, and this is mostly just to make sure we're all on the same page. I know that the bread and butter, what's being referred to in the slides as the bread and butter procurement, has been sort of, I don't know if I would characterize that as completely removed, but deprioritized, maybe completely removed. And I understand in that change that were there members who were interested in having some of that service, they could work together with CC Power to achieve that. This isn't, we're not saying it can't happen. We're just saying in terms of priorities, it's shifted lower. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, to me, that's what we're trying to capture is that we want to make sure anything we do is driven and directed by the board with members opting in. So we didn't want to get in front of that process and say we would do this until and if there's appropriate interest. And then on
Okay.
top of that, we wanted to make sure we have the protocols in place to not disrupt any actors in the marketplace who may already be mid-procurement. And so we know it's confusing if CC Power is procuring on behalf of members who are also in the market. So we wanted to have those protocols in place and beefed up to ensure that there's no confusion.
Okay.
Yeah, and then what I would just say is also we're not changing the JPA structure, which is very broad of what CC Power can pursue. So, in my mind, it's, deprioritize, but if a future board, wants to pick that up again, it's certainly within the scope of what things that CC Power was created that could do.
Mm-hmm. Good. And then the other is, I'm not really sure what the detail might be behind the statement that there's phase 1 dollars that could be used. So I would definitely be interested, Alex, in understanding that before it's brought to the board for any action.
Sure, no problem. I can
just putting a marker down.
I'll close the loop on that for sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Barb. Howard.
Thanks. I just want to thank the board and the ad hoc committee for the good collaboration, I think, on this overall process, and Alex for your heavy involvement and leadership in helping to update this process. I support the strategic priorities as they're outlined here. The one thing I would maybe just add to it is it sounds like your intention is to move forward with a more fulsome, detailed strategic plan. I think I've oftentimes kind of referred to that as the work plan, right? I think the goal of these priorities is to ensure that there's really good alignment amongst our members and our board members here. So it gives you very clear direction and ultimately your staff to go execute. But obviously there's a lot of details underlying this that need to be fleshed out. How one would go own a project requires a lot of diligence and a whole process as to how you actually go own projects. And there's a lot of ways to go about that. So my ask to you is just to think about how do we develop a work plan, or if you want to call it a strategic plan that fleshes out those details and continue to get some good alignment with the board, but also thinking about how do we get that alignment with our staff? Because I know that's a general pain point that you've pointed to, where sometimes there's a little bit of misalignment amongst our staff with the board members, and so how to ensure that we continue to move forward in this process and for you to feel like you're getting good, consistent direction. And to the extent it's not clear, how do we make sure to surface that to clarify things? At this stage, at this high level, I feel like we've put in enough work to feel like we're well aligned. And my only, I guess, caution is to think about, as we're fleshing out those details in a work plan, is to ensure that continues to be the case, that you feel like you're not getting different types of feedback or whatnot that may track you in a different direction. So, yeah.
Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks, Howard. Monica.
Yeah, so I certainly support what's here in the strategic plan and I guess the work that's going to happen going forward. I'm not sure where this should reside, if it should be part of a work plan or maybe a discussion about the need for a policy. But it seems to me that when we first started CC Power, there was the idea that we would adhere to some kind of minimum procurement process, whether it be mostly an RFP type process, right? And some of us CCAs have very explicit policies and standards around purchasing, like what we can and cannot do. And I'm assuming that, in terms of the most conservative or rigorous ones would probably be some from the cities like San Jose and San Francisco, where they have very clear rules around how they can solicit or either through a formal process or a bilateral discussion. But I know that this has been a discussion at the working group level, but I would like to maybe calendar for 2026 a discussion about, what is our procurement standard? Like, if we do an RFP, can you entertain projects outside of the RFP process? When can you entertain bilateral discussions so that we don't kind of get into a situation where we're challenged in our solicitation process? So, but generally, I'm fine with what's in the strategic plan, and I look forward to working on the work plan.
Thank you.
Great feedback. Any other discussion on this item? All right, then I'm going to go to public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? Can raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I know I had a motion. I don't think I have a second though. Sorry, Barb, go ahead.
I'm prepared to second it, but I'd also note that there's a missing word board in one of the whereases. So just for cleanup, if we could take care of that, that would be good. But with that, I'll second the motion.
Great, thanks for catching that. Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Ava Community Energy,
Yes.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. So we are on to item 6B. I'll pass it to you, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Chair Mitchell, and thanks for the direction on the strategic priority. I look forward to closing the loop with you. The next few items are all somewhat narrow implementation steps for Tumbleweed or some of the ongoing work. So Resolution 251202, which is Agenda Item B, is to approve and pursue and acquire a bulk buy of a data service. This looks similar to what you saw last month where we were doing that with Ascend. This is a different one, and we bulk buy this every year on behalf of members for energy price forecasts and technology reports. We call it the WoodMac subscription. And so that's what this item is. This is also timely though, because that information helps us also further do sensitivity analysis for the upcoming solicitation. And I'll speak more about that later. But so I recommend approval of this. We have 8 members who are interested in participating in this bulk buy. Collectively, it's going to yield, over $90,000 in savings per member for the participating members. And so it's a good opportunity to execute the bulk buy function and yield at least some value for members. I'm happy to answer any questions, and this will be the 3rd year that we would be offering this.
Great. I will motion to approve, but I have one addition to the motion where I would like our general manager to generally look at policies for the board in 2026 of, either increasing delegation or authority or increasing it to the officers so that we could have potentially less board meetings and be more efficient in the coming year. I don't know exactly what that'll look like, but I'd like the general manager to take a look at that. Certainly there are some board meetings where we could have just a board meeting to approve these types of contracts, and I don't know if that's the most efficient use of time. So I'd like the general manager to take a look at that in 2026.
Thank
But with
you.
that addition, I'm happy to move this item.
I'll second.
Great. Thanks, Beth. All right, I will go to the public. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? All right, I'm not seeing any. I think we can vote.
Ava Community Energy,
Yes.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power San Francisco,
I'm sorry, I just need a clarification. Lori, were you saying that you're modifying the resolution, or you're just giving that additional direction?
Additional direction.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great. Okay, we're on to the next one, item 6C, Alex.
Yeah, thanks. So 6C is an exciting one. This is a contract for the board to consider for scheduling coordinator services from Tenaska Power Services, or TPS. As many of you know, Tumbleweed comes online in about 6 months. It's probably one of the highest level priorities we have is to make sure we're ready. And part of that is getting the scheduling coordinator set up, and then also a battery optimization vendor, which you'll see in the next agenda item. We have a subcommittee that we work with, comprised of the participating member staff, called the Operations Advisory Subcommittee. So this subcommittee has been functioning very well and went through a deliberative competitive process to identify the preferred vendor for scheduling coordinator. In the end, after a competitive process of, I think, over 11 bids, Tenaska was selected and a contract has been negotiated. The notional value of that contract is over $250,000. And it's a 3-year contract. After the 3-year term, the contract would either terminate, it could auto renew, or we could terminate it or renegotiate. So I strongly recommend approval of this contract. And just so you know, we had unanimous support from the Operations Advisory Subcommittee for Tenaska in this case. So they felt it was the best fit for members' needs for this project. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Let's get a public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this one? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Yeah, Howard.
I just wanted to confirm that this scheduling coordinator agreement is only for the Tumbleweed project alone, or would it potentially apply to future projects as well?
We could build on it, Howard. The way we negotiated it is just for Tumbleweed at this time.
Okay, got it. And so I just want to note, since we're not a participant on the Tumbleweed project, while I am supportive of this workflow, I'll abstain from the vote itself.
Okay, thank you. Philippe, did you want to add something, please?
Yeah, just to Howard's last point right there, pursuant to the PPSA, the voting procedures are modified for this specific resolution to only be for those project participants in Tumbleweed. So the other board members would be asked to abstain from the vote.
Great. All right, so I have a motion. I'll motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second. That was Barbara.
Great. Okay, I think we can vote.
For clarification, so Ava Clean Energy is not participating in the vote at all, right? They're not just abstaining, they're not participating because they're not a member of this project, correct?
Correct. Nor would 3CE.
Yeah,
So
3CE is also excluded from the vote.
Okay. Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 7-0.
Great. All right, on to our last one here, 6D.
Okay, so also in conjunction with the Tenaska agreement is, and this is required by our contract, to have a battery optimization vendor. Again, we used the Operations Advisory Subcommittee and we solicited the market for competitive bids. At the end, it was unanimously supported to select Ascend for its battery optimization services, which are called Smart Bidder. So this contract authorizes that or delegates that for us to execute the contract. Again, the value here is over $250,000 over 3 years, and this is just for Tumbleweed. And so strongly recommend approval of this. One of the reasons for selecting Ascend here is that this would be one of the first 8-hour lithium-ion batteries operating in the CAISO. And so there's a lot of learning and probably value in how you bid the 8-hour storage resource to maximize revenues in the energy marketplace. So it's an exciting learning opportunity, and the members wanted to use Ascend for this service.
I'll move the item.
Great, thanks much. Is there a second?
Second. It's Sean.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, I'm gonna go to public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? Okay, we're back to the board. Any discussion before we vote? All right, I think we're ready to, oh, Howard, yes.
Yeah, I just want to maybe clarify the same point in our prior item, given, this is associated. So is Ava and 3C also not voting on this one as well?
Correct.
Okay, great.
I think for future items like this, it would be helpful to have the resolution list only those members eligible to vote.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. We'll make sure that's included in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Rob, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I appreciate the structure. I am a little bit concerned that it's probably unrealistic that we're going to have separate scheduling coordinators for separate projects. So the process by which we're sort of selecting and locking in a scheduling coordinator, like Howard, I'm supportive of it. I've been through the agreements. I'm supportive of, or I think Tenaska is a good selection for it, but as a process structure, I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with sort of decisions that long term, like you likely fold into future agreements. So we're making a decision today about a scheduling coordinator, which is a really important partner focused on a particular project, that's sort of limiting the ability and view of like how long term that works in the project. So this is a little bit of a process pinch point that I'm highlighting. No objection to the item moving forward at this point, though.
And Chair Mitchell, if helpful, Philippe and I did consider these longer term implications similar to what Director Shaw is suggesting. Would you guys like to hear an update on how we factored that in and where we landed?
Sure.
Philippe, do you mind unmuting just to say a little bit about how the contract negotiations worked out with an eye towards future opportunities, but trying to limit scope for this purpose today?
Yeah, we did go through a competitive solicitation process to evaluate both the scheduling coordinator and the optimization vendor for selections, specifically initially with an eye towards the Tumbleweed project. But we did recognize that this could establish a precedent for other resources coming down the road. We had at one point discussed the potential for a coordinated operations agreement to be entered into through negotiations amongst all project participants, but there was a decision by non-participants staff that they did not want to participate in this process to do like a master coordinated operations agreement. So for this specific purpose, we did run this through the operations advisory subcommittee specific to Tumbleweed. We could still theoretically have a second scheduling coordinator and optimization vendor for other resources in the future. As of now, the other resources in our portfolio look limited in terms of which ones would actually come in during the 3-year term that we have with these two, with Tenaska and NISN. And so we don't see that there's significant conflicts that would emerge, and we would have the opportunity to revisit this down the road for any other projects for which we would have the scheduling coordinator responsibilities.
Thank you, Chair Morris and Philippe. I'm glad you're thinking about that as it moves through. Appreciate that.
Great. Any other comments on this item? Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Clean Power San Francisco,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy, Peninsula Clean Energy,
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0.
All right, we're almost. So on to item 6E, which is our 2026 officers election update. Just a short update from me here. If you're interested in being an officer, please let me know. I will be transitioning out as president. So that one is definitely up if people are interested. yeah, if you could let us know, this item will come to the board in January for approval. So if you're interested in being an officer at CC Power, raise your hand, let us know. And with that, we're on to our last item, which is, oh, I'm sorry, and let me go to any member of the public wanting to provide a comment on item 6E. So any member of the public wanting to comment on that one? Okay, with that we are on to our last item, which is 6F, our GM report.
Thanks, Chair Mitchell, and thanks everybody. I'll be brief here, but I wanted to just pause and thank the CC Power staff and your staff who participated in the Operations Advisory Subcommittee. We've had a lot of productive collaborative work to line up these contracts, including with Tenaska and Ascend, and then also you'll see an update today on the results of a solicitation. So people have been working very hard, and I wanted to acknowledge all of their contributions. Thank you. So first, something exciting. As part of the budget last year, the board authorized an all-member solicitation. We've worked with members through our resource planning working group to better pinpoint what we would solicit for. And we launched a large solicitation in November. Final offers came in on December 5th. And the targets which we were looking for were build transfers, ITC or PTC eligible solar and wind, IRP, MTR eligible solar plus storage, standalone storage, and other eligible candidate resources, and then some of the target emerging technologies. The initial findings, and I would say this is very preliminary, we're still diving through everything and doing QC, but we had 162 discrete offers for 97 projects with 43 counterparties. It's over 6,500 megawatts of generation and 18,000 megawatts of storage offers. It's mostly in state with a few out-of-state offers. And we saw pretty good diversity of technologies offered in, but there was a case where not all technologies were offered, particularly one type of technology. Lastly, with the multiple BTA offers, we think this will potentially inform some of the strategic priority work under the OWN strategic priority. And so we'll do an extra look at those BTA offers and see how we could work with members to think about those for candidate projects. The go forward plan would be to do our work with our team on valuation, diligence, shortlisting, and getting members' expressions of interest. And then once we have that, that sort of indicates members are very serious, and we negotiate the final contract or close to, and then in May, June could come back before the board for a consideration of the projects. So I wanted to pause here and see if there are any questions. Again, I think this is pretty exciting, although still a lot of work in front of us, and we don't know exactly what the offers will, how they'll look from a valuation standpoint. Okay, I'll move on. Also wanted to close the loop and notify the board that last month we discussed our geothermal strategic origination phase 2A. So that's where we're working. We've identified potential partners for collaborating on geothermal development where we would have exclusivity or rights of first refusal on project opportunities. A lot of these projects are candidate projects that are not mature yet, and it seems prudent to get into a relationship through some sort of agreement with them now where we can collaborate with them and eventually have project opportunities that would be binding and priceable for members. We know that understanding the timelines of geothermal development, while many of you do have a lot of expertise, it's always helpful to learn more. And so Sonoma has offered to host or lead a workshop. That's now scheduled for January 9th, and we're calling it a geothermal education session. It is optional, but you'll have from some of your CCAs, I'd say some really knowledgeable staff who've been working directly with geothermal counterparties a lot. The main speakers would be Jeff Cyphers from Sonoma, Ryan Tracy from Sonoma, and then Elon Fussman from Clean Power SF. You may know that Ryan and Elon have chaired our Firm Clean Resources, which is also geothermal project advisory subcommittee for years now. and have been part of essentially all of our negotiations and ongoing relationship building with our counterparties, which are Ormat and Open Mountain Energy. And additionally, they also work with other geothermal developers. So it should be a good opportunity to learn, and then also to hear more about how Sonoma has worked with incubating some of the development efforts for geothermal in its territory or thereabouts. And so we hope everybody can join if of interest. And then lastly, we welcome board members to this, and I'll work with our general counsel on any Brown Act considerations. We don't foresee any decision making associated with this meeting, so it's really just an education session. And with that, Vice Chair Cyphers, since I'm speaking about some of your work here, is there anything you wanted to add or clarify?
I think that's great. I think what I'd like to invite into that conversation is probably mostly technical and procurement related. I think if we bring up some of the legislative and regulatory efforts we're tackling, I think what I'd like to do is just tag them as identifying their existence, but not really focus the session on that area. And if that resonates with the board, then that's what I'll bring back to Ryan.
Excellent, thank you. And for the boards, I'll share this on the next slide, but this does feed back into the geothermal strategic origination. So we can now move to the next slide. So in January, we have these 3 geothermal strategic origination agreements. In various forms, they're negotiated to include ROFRs or exclusivity. And so we'll be bringing those agreements to the board. Underneath that phase 2A, I have tried to send a cost update to the board on that, where our initial costs have been fairly low, and the recommendation will be that we can move forward with these agreements. But we didn't want to get ahead of that. I just wanted you to know that's coming, and part of the timing here for this education session is to prep the board for that, or prep your staff so they can discuss these agreements with you. The other agreement we expect in January, is...
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. The other agreement is a contract for Hydrostore's Willow Rock compressed air energy storage. We do not have all members in this project, but we would have, I think, 7, or that I think so. And Philippe, nod or correct me if I'm wrong. And so that contract's been almost final negotiated, and we'd bring that back in January. Okay. And then I wanted to just give you a picture of a few areas of work for the first half of next year. On geothermal origination, which I've been discussing, we have that education session and the agreement approvals, and then the work goes on, and the work will be more of a simmer, where we have some agreements, we're checking in with the developers and trying to collaborate with them in the appropriate ways as they go through their development process. That said, the project is only budgeted to run through the end of this fiscal year. So there's a natural reconsideration point for that at the end of June as part of the upcoming budget cycle. On Tumbleweed, this project is slated to go live and our contract activate in June. So we'll be doing a site visit for us in February, and then a potential ribbon cutting would occur around mid-April or late April. And since this would be one of the first 8-hour battery projects in the state, we would welcome everyone to use and participate in this ribbon cutting in whatever way is of value to you, and it could be an exciting moment. On Ormat, we've been working closely with Ormat for years, and part of the contract of that structure is to have them officially present a project into the portfolio of projects. And we do expect that initial project notice will occur in Q1. So that'll be an exciting moment where that project portfolio concept becomes more real, and we start to have clear visibility to the timing, CODs, and specific sites that would be part of our portfolio. Also, in the first half of the year, I'll come back to the board with a sort of a timeline for this, but here's a picture of it. Would be, pending direction from the board, we'll do our member check-ins where we like to see what's working, what's not working with CC Power, and how we could explore joint action efforts that would be of value. We'd be working with the board to update them, and there would potentially be some sort of ad hoc committee on the budget. In parallel, Philippe is closing the loop with your staff, particularly your procurement directors, to make sure there's high alignment between what the board's telling CC Power to do and how we're going to be implementing that with your teams. And there's a lot of iteration there that's very helpful. And then eventually that would culminate in, May or at the latest June in a work plan and budget adoption. And then finally, on the strategic plan side, now that the strategic priorities are updated, we'll be incorporating those into an updated strategic plan. As Director Chang mentioned, that would have, more texture around how we're going to approach these strategic priorities, et cetera. So we wanted to get that done in Q1, and then most likely come back to the board for adoption of that full strategic plan, which would serve for 26 to 2030 and guide CC Power for that time frame. So these are just some slices of the work coming up, but I felt they were important to share, and I welcome any conversation or discussion. Okay. And then lastly, as we wrap up, the only GM activity of late has been I just executed on the work from the last board meeting where the board approved an Ascend Master Services Agreement and then a work order associated with that for PowerSim. PowerSim is the tool we used for the valuation exercise of the solicitation. So that's now underway. And this is different from the other Ascend matter we talked about today, which is Smart Bidder. And so we've just executed on that on December 5th, and presumably we'll execute soon on the other parts of agreements that were authorized. So Chair Mitchell, that's it from me. And here we are at the end of the year. I just wanted to say thanks to you and thanks to everybody for squeezing in so many meetings, including this meeting late in the year.
Yeah, thanks so much. Any discussion on item 6F, the GM report?
Thank you, Alex and team.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll get a public comment. Any member of the public wanting to comment on item 6F? All right, I'm not hearing any. So we are on to item 7, which is discussion of any individual member items. And record time here, about 45-minute board meeting, trying to get you out early. So I know it's a busy season. But any individual member items people want to bring up? No, we're all ready to go. It's the holidays. Okay, well, with that, I think we can adjourn. Thanks, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy
Thanks a lot.
holidays.
Bye.